Hey everybody, welcome back to the channel. E3 has come and gone, and it was a real mixed bag quality-wise. But there was a lot to talk about, so let's get into it. Alright, so let's start with my prediction results. If you didn't know, I did 10 predictions for each of the big three, that being Xbox, Nintendo, and PlayStation, because I assumed PlayStation would have some kind of event, which they have up to this point still not announced, so guess I kind of missed my shot on that one. But I'm going to start with the one that I got the most predictions correct on, which is Xbox. My first prediction was that we were going to see Starfield, and we did. And not only was it in the showcase, it actually was the beginning of the showcase. They led off with Todd Howard coming out to announce Bethesda's first brand new IP in almost 20 years. Which is absolutely massive. And for them to be able to then go on and say, not only that that game is exclusive to Xbox's platform, not only that it's in a brand new engine, meaning that it hopefully will have significantly less bugs and issues than previous Bethesda games, but also to then give us a release date of 11/11/22 is monumental. I don't think that they could have possibly started this showcase off on a better foot. My second correct prediction was that we would see Psychonauts 2. They gave us a fantastic trailer for it that only served to reinvigorate my and many other people's excitement for this game, and then they ended it with a release date of August 25th, 2021, meaning that I have approximately 2 months to play and finish Psychonauts 1 because I never actually managed to finish it as a kid. But I am extremely excited for Psychonauts 2. I think it looks great, and we don't have that much longer to wait for it. I also predicted that we would see Halo Infinite, and yeah, it wasn't really much of a prediction. I mean, that might as well have been the free space on the bingo board that was this Xbox conference. But nonetheless, of course we saw it, and it looked really good. That year of polish that they've been able to put on this game was absolutely worth it. If you compare the cutscene that they showed us this year to the one that they did last year, it's a night and day difference in terms of lighting and texture, and just really across the board looks so much better. And they spent a lot of time talking about multiplayer, which looks absolutely fantastic. It even makes it look like the grappling hook that they added is going to add a ton to that gameplay. I'm sure people will complain about it though, because like people complained when they added sprinting to Halo, so really changing up the formula to any degree is going to upset a certain amount of people, and there's just really nothing you can do about that. But I think it's a really good idea. I think it's going to make it a lot more fast paced. And that campaign tease that they gave us felt really good. It seems like we're going to sort of have Master Chief be able to be more grounded as a character by grouping him together with this pilot character and with this new AI, and it has me really excited for the story of Halo in a way that I have not been maybe ever before. I wish we had gotten a more solid release date than holiday 2021. I don't think that means it's going to be pushed back to 2022, which some people do. It just seems like they're maybe not fully prepared to pin that date down, which is mildly concerning, but I don't think concerning enough to start being actually worried about it. Then we got Forza Horizon 5, and just like I predicted and just like the rumors were saying, it takes place in Mexico, which I'll be honest, when I was reading the rumors of that, I was a little worried about it because when I think of Mexico, I don't necessarily think of the most beautiful location, but after seeing what we saw in this showcase, the trailer and then the following gameplay, I was completely wrong. This is quite possibly one of the best looking video games I have ever seen. Like, there were at least 2 times in this trailer that I went, oh wow, that's a really nice picture of like where they modeled this area off of, and then it was like, no, there's cars in it now. This is gameplay. This is all gameplay. And I have not had that reaction to a video game in a very long time. So I'm extremely impressed by the way that this game looks. It's just absolutely gorgeous. And then I had 2 other game predictions that did come true, but not during the actual Xbox showcase proper. And those were Hellblade 2. I predicted that we would see an update on that, and we got it in an extended Xbox showcase that they put on a couple days after the initial one, where it was more interview based. I recommend that you go and watch that if you have interest in deeper dives on games instead of just the trailers, because it was really interesting. But one of the games that they talked about there was Hellblade 2, and they showed off a couple of quick clips from it and some screenshots and just kind of went over the work that they're doing for it, and it looks absolutely great. I will say though, it seems like it's quite a ways off still. Like, we are almost certainly not going to be playing that game until 2023, and that's a little disappointing, but I can wait. You know, if that's the time that they need to make that game as good as it's going to be, then take all the time that you need. And then the other prediction that happened at a different showcase was I predicted that we would see Elden Ring. And we actually got that during the Summer Games Fest kickoff live, or whatever Jeff Keighley was calling his show. And it looks absolutely fantastic as well. Getting an open world Souls game is really exciting to me because I love open world RPGs and I love Souls games. So hopefully the combination of those two things is as good as I hope it is. I hope that maybe there's a little bit more proper storytelling and world building than you normally get in a Souls game, because I feel like if you're spreading it out over a wide open world, it might be a little bit harder to come together. But even if it doesn't, just the art style and the excitement of being in that world, I think will be enough to carry it through. And while I'm on the topic of Summer Games Fest, just a really quick review of that. I thought it was pretty good, but Jeff Keighley has this weird tendency of over-relying on celebrities and musical numbers instead of just showing games, and I really wish he would stop doing that. And then my last correct prediction was that we would not see a game from either Compulsion Games, the Coalition, or the Initiative's Perfect Dark. On all three cases, I thought it was just too soon to see a new game from them, or to see more information in the case of Perfect Dark, because I do think that that game was probably shown off too early. And I think that that's exactly what has happened here, is they had plenty of other things to show, so they just let these things stay on the table for a later date when they maybe need to fill more spaces. And it's probably the correct decision. So that's 7 of my 10 Xbox predictions I got correct, which I think is pretty good, considering that I don't have any insiders or people telling me what's actually happening. But that does mean that I did get 3 wrong, and those were, I thought we would see something about an acquisition, because there were just so many rumors about acquisitions, but I guess maybe if they have made acquisitions or are looking to make acquisitions in the near future, that's something that they will talk about at a later date. We didn't see Everwild, which I was a little bit confused about at first, because it seemed like that was a game they were trying to get out pretty soon, but it sounds like they're basically rebooting that game, so probably won't hear about that in a while. And then my long shot hope was that we would get Persona on Xbox, and that obviously didn't happen. I still think it will or should happen at some point, but that point is just not now. But there were a ton of other really great announcements that came out of the showcase. Like, we got the announcement of the crossover between Sea of Thieves and Pirates of the Caribbean, which I would not have thought would work before I saw this trailer. But honestly, it kind of looks like those two things go together as like a natural fit, which I would not have at all expected. But it has me really excited. I'm almost certainly going to jump in on that on the 22nd when it launches. We got Redfall, which was being rumored beforehand as Project Omen, and I honestly did not believe any of that up until the second I saw Pete Hines' Bite Back t-shirt that he was wearing. So clearly I should have put more stock into those rumors, but it looks like it's going to be a really popular game. I've already seen a ton of people saying how excited they are for it. I don't think it's necessarily going to do anything for me, but that's going to be big. Outer Worlds 2 was announced, which is absolutely insane. I would not have thought that they were in a position to announce a third game, because they are, of course, still working on Grounded and are still probably about 2 years out from releasing Avowed, because I don't think that game is going to release until either very late 2022 or 2023, more likely. So the fact that they're willing to announce a third game to develop is insane to me. They must be a lot more confident in their ability to put out games than I would have thought, and that's can only be good news. Then there was a little cute game called Animal Party, which just looks like Gang Beasts, but with like higher resolution animals. And I don't know why, it's just adorable and I really want to play it. And then my sort of like hidden gem of the show is Atomic Heart. I think this game has been announced before. I'm sure it's coming from a pretty small team because I feel like it's been talked about on and on for multiple years, but it looks like a weird cross between like Fallout and BioShock, and that is like almost the perfect game for me. So I'm really hoping that this game sticks the landing, because right now I am extremely excited to play it. So all in all, I would give Xbox's showcase an A. It did extremely well. As a commercial for Game Pass, it was absolutely killer. Being able to say that almost every single game in that showcase is going to be launching day one into Game Pass is huge. And they did a great job of laying out a roadmap of all the games we can expect to play over the next 1 or 2 years, which is exactly what this showcase needed to do. And I even think that having that secondary extended showcase after the fact to have longer in-depth conversations about some of the games that weren't able to show up in the conference themselves was a really smart idea, because it lets us know, like, hey, we're still working on these games, we're still going to be talking about them, we just didn't take the time to put together assets for this particular show. And so I think that was really smart. So moving on now to the Nintendo Direct. This one is going to, I think, go a lot faster because, well, frankly, I got a lot less of my predictions correct. But my first prediction, and the first one that came true, was that we would get a new Smash character. And it turns out that the new character is Kazuya from Tekken, which I think is a really weird choice. I don't know that anyone was specifically asking for a Tekken character at all. And honestly, I think if you were going to put a Tekken character into Smash, I don't think that most people would have asked for Kazuya. Like Heihachi maybe, but if it's me, I'm looking for like King or Eddie, an actual really popular character that people like. So I think it's kind of a weird choice, but he is a famous character, so it does make some amount of sense. I also predicted that we would get a popular IP from previous Nintendo consoles getting their first new game onto the Switch. I assumed that it would be either Donkey Kong or Pikmin, because that's sort of where the rumors were beforehand, and it just makes sense. Those are games that I could very easily see working on the Switch. But instead, it ended up being Metroid, not with Metroid Prime 4, but with Metroid Dread, a game that I thought was canceled like 10 years ago, and WarioWare with WarioWare Get It Together. And both of the games look weirdly low budget, which is worrying because it to me says that Nintendo is maybe not putting a whole lot of stock behind them. But they are coming out and in the very near future, so that is a good thing overall. Another prediction that I had was that they would port older games to the Switch, and I assumed because it's a Zelda anniversary year that it would be more Zelda games, but instead, the most notable one that they reported over, because there were multiple if you count like Tony Hawk 1 and 2 or whatever, but the most notable one that they were porting over to Switch is the Advanced Wars games, which I've never played before. I know that they have a very dedicated following for people who wish that they would get a new game, and I hope that this getting ported over is an indication that they are thinking about making a proper sequel to it at some point in the near future, but Nintendo does weird things, so who knows. We also got a brand new trailer for Breath of the Wild 2, which will apparently have its own subtitle, but they weren't prepared to tell us that yet because evidently it will be a spoiler. So I guess it's going to be called Breath of the Wild Zelda Dies in this one. But it looks really good. Like, I'll be the first to say Breath of the Wild didn't do as much for me as I feel like it did for most people. I liked it, I just didn't love it, which most people really, really loved it. But this trailer has me very excited. It looked a lot more beautiful than the previous game, which was not really a problem that I had with it, but it looks really good. And the idea of exploring these islands in the sky is just really exciting. Like it's a very interesting concept that I can't wait to play around with. And when you add in the new time manipulation powers that it looks like they're showing off in that trailer, there's going to be a whole lot of fun to be had in that sandbox, and I genuinely cannot wait to play this. And that's the first time that I've had that feeling about a Zelda game, because I didn't grow up with a lot of Nintendo games in my life. So I'm really excited about this. And then my last correct Nintendo prediction was that we would not get a Pokemon Direct or see a Pokemon game in the core Direct. This became pretty obvious to me as soon as they announced the release dates for the Sinnoh remake and Legends Arceus in just a random tweet, like a week before the event or 2 weeks before the event. So I felt pretty confident about this. It is kind of a bummer, but I'm sure that we will get another Pokemon Direct at some point closer to the launch of the Sinnoh remake, so I'm not really that upset about it. So that means I only got 5 of my 10 Nintendo predictions correct, which I don't think is bad. Half of them correct is still, I think, pretty good, all things considered. But that does mean that my incorrect predictions were that we didn't end up seeing anything for either Bayonetta 3 or Metroid Prime 4, which is troubling. It means to me that both of those games are probably having more difficulty than they're letting on, which is not a good sign at all. We didn't get a new Fire Emblem game unless you count Advance Wars, which I don't, and I don't think most people would. But it is sort of just like the sci-fi tank version of Fire Emblem. But even then, that's just a remaster, so I don't know if that would even count. And then we didn't get a new game from Monolith Soft, which I'm not super upset about because I've never actually played any of the Xeno Saga, Xenoblade, Xenogear, whatever games. But I am surprised to not hear anything from them because it's been a while since their last game came out. I also thought we would see the Switch Pro, and we didn't get an announcement of it, which is really strange because there's non-stop rumors that they're trying to get the Switch Pro out this year. I do suspect that Breath of the Wild 2 trailer was running on advanced hardware, so it was probably running on the Switch Pro, and I'm not really sure why they didn't announce it, but I'm sure they have their reasons. And then my last incorrect prediction was one that I knew was not going to happen, and I mostly just said as a joke, but yes, of course, we did not get a localization of Mother 3, despite the fact that Terry Crews asked for it. Oops. And then the only other announcement from the Nintendo Direct that I want to mention is Shin Megami Tensei 5. I'm a huge fan of SMT, so this is probably going to be a day one buy for me, almost certainly. But even my own personal nostalgia and biases aside, this game looks like a step up from Shin Megami Tensei 4 in a big way, and that's really exciting to me. Just graphically and in terms of what the game is capable of, it looks really exciting, and I think it's going to be a big hit. I think it's probably going to be one of Nintendo's bigger games this year. So I think Nintendo did a really solid job this year with their Nintendo Direct. There weren't a ton of games that excited me personally. There was obviously SMT5 and Breath of the Wild 2, and I'll probably give a shot to those Advance War remasters. But I know that there were a lot of things that excited people, other than myself. Metroid Dread and WarioWare, and even the Super Mario Party Superstars, or whatever that was. Those were all games that I know a lot of other people are really excited for that just do absolutely nothing for me personally. But I think that they did a really good job. Maybe not quite as great of a show as Xbox had, but I also think that they had a lot less to prove than Xbox had. So it might kind of even out in that regard. But both of them, I think, did a very remarkable job. Which brings me to PlayStation, and this is of course going to be an extremely fast thing to talk about because PlayStation didn't actually do a showcase this year, which I think is a missed opportunity, but weirdly, despite that, I still got 3 of my predictions correct.
I predicted they would either show God of War Ragnarok or announce that it had been delayed, and they did announce that it had been delayed. Which I don't know if that should even count as a delay, because honestly, I don't think even the people at Sony Santa Monica ever believed that God of War Ragnarok was going to come out in 2021. But regardless, it happened. And I also predicted that we would not see a new game from Sony Bend or their answer to Game Pass that Jim Ryan had been talking about. And of course, because they didn't talk about anything, they obviously didn't talk about either of those two things. So 3 out of 10 for a showcase that didn't end up happening. Like, I'll take it. It's not terrible. And I do want to talk a little bit about how much of a missed opportunity it is for PlayStation to not do anything during this E3 period. Because not only are they not doing anything for E3, but we also haven't heard anything from them in several months, with the one thing that they have shown being gameplay for Horizon Forbidden West, which does look really good, but it just kind of looks like a more pretty version of Horizon Zero Dawn, which, you know, it's not really a surprise. You know, it's exactly what everyone expected it to be. And so going into the second half of the year, when all of the shopping happens, you know, over the summer and on into the holidays with things like Prime Days, you know, it's a weird situation where right now all people are talking about is Xbox and Nintendo, and really the only context in which people are talking about PlayStation is to say, where were they, or what are they doing, or what's going on. And that's not the thing that you want people talking about when they're in a situation where they're looking to buy a new console or they're looking to invest in a new generation of systems. You know, you want them to know what they're going to get from you, and for that to be sort of on the top of their mind. And if you're letting other people dominate the news cycle while you sit back, then that's not happening. And I'm sure that now that I've said all of this, they'll announce that they're doing a state of play like next week or something. But I just felt like I needed to say something about it. And, you know, maybe if they just didn't have a lot to show or a lot to say, I can understand them not having a showcase, because there were definitely some showcases at this E3 that probably should not have happened, like the Koch Primetime one where they didn't show absolutely anything and it was just interviews of people saying nothing. So there are situations where saying nothing is better than saying something, but I just don't know that this is one of those situations. But anyway, you can basically break down all of the showcases from E3 into 3 general categories. That being the top tier, which is of course Xbox and Nintendo, who absolutely killed it. They did a fantastic job, did exactly what they needed to do, showed off a ton of games that people are really excited for, and are absolutely owning the mind share and sort of the headlines for the time being. Then you've got the perfectly fine tier, which is just middle of the road showcases that did as well as you expected them to do, or as well as they do in years prior. So things like the Summer Games Fest, Ubisoft, the IGN Expo, I think did a perfectly fine job, and the PC Game Show, which didn't do great, but it's about as well as we would expect from them, because they never really have an amazing show. And then you have the tier of ones that probably should not have happened below that. And that's things like Gearbox, where they really just talked about their movie that they didn't even really announce anything for. So that was kind of a waste of time. You've got Square Enix in there because seemingly their showcase only really served to make their fans very angry over things that I don't fully understand myself. Then you've got Devolver, who did do about as well of a job as usual, but the joke of the Devolver conference is starting to run a little thin. And then, of course, Koch Primetime, that was absolutely abysmal, and I hope that they either never do another one or take a note out of Nintendo and Xbox's book and actually show something, because that was absolutely terrible. So that's that, and I think I did a pretty great job of my predictions this year. Honestly, 7 out of 10 for Xbox I think is great. 5 out of 10 of my Nintendo predictions is pretty good. And getting 3 of my 10 PlayStation predictions correct, despite there not even being a PlayStation conference, is frankly a miracle. E3 was a lot of fun this year, Not as good as some years pre-pandemic, to be sure, but absolutely a massive step in the right direction as compared to last year. So I really hope that we continue going down this path and get back to the glory days of old E3, because I really, really miss that. But anyway, that's all for today, and I just wanted to say thank you. I recently passed 100 subscribers, which is the first major milestone for me in my YouTube career. So thanks to every single one of you that's helped me get to this point. It really means a lot to me to know that I'm doing something right here. And to hit this milestone almost 2 full months before the time that I had as a goal to hit it is an absolutely amazing feeling. So again, thank you all so much. And until next time, I'll see you around.